live on Facebook, YouTube, Twitch, and blasttheradio.com. This is The Lowell Green Show. The number to call and be heard around the world is 613-413-2217. Or email Lowell at blasttheradio.com. And now, here is Lowell Green.
Thank you, John. Question. Well, are we on? Are we okay, John? What's going on here? We've got a technical problem, folks. John, here we go. John, are we on or not? I'm going to excuse me. I'm going to proceed as if we're on, even though I have no idea whether we are or not. Technicalities. Good God. I have a question. Why in the hell is Doug Ford even considering keeping our children out of school next week? You know what? If he comes down with a ruling that kids aren't going to go to school next week, I think we need a revolution in the streets. I think parents should, picket every school or whatever it is. Because with the evidence that we have, and we have plenty of evidence now, it should be obvious. There is no justification whatsoever for keeping our children at home next week, next month. In fact, it's becoming clear every day that the time has come to start easing up on COVID restrictions in this province, because by now the evidence is very clear. And the evidence has been there for the past couple of weeks, I would say. The evidence is that this new Omicron mutation is not nearly the threat that was posed by earlier versions, including, and in particular, Delta. Certainly not for those who have been double vaccinated. Yes, Omicron is much more infectious. No question about that. That's all we keep hearing. Are we on the air, John? Are we okay?
Did you miss me?
Oh, yes. Was I on? Have I been on?
You're on.
Okay. Yeah, there's no question that Omicron is much more infectious. We know that. We keep being pounded with that fact, day and night by the media, by the health authorities, et cetera, et cetera. But the real question here, and we've gone through this before, John, the real question here is, okay, what is this doing to our hospitals? Because the intent of earlier lockdowns and restrictions, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, was to so-called flatten the curve. In other words, to slow the progression of the disease down so that our hospitals were not overwhelmed. Now, with Delta, there were occasions where some hospitals, particularly in Toronto and in Alberta, were overwhelmed. We must remember a situation where Toronto was sending patients here to Ottawa. But that's not the situation today. Now, I know we keep hearing, and we've heard now for the past, well, it'll get worse. Yeah, it's getting a little worse. A few more people are in hospital, but let's look at the local figures, okay? Let's look at what's happening here in Ottawa. It would appear, now it's very difficult to get figures, and once again, I know, John, you've had complaints about this before, but trying to get accurate figures out of health authorities, provincial authorities, federal authorities, is like trying to pull hen's teeth. And let me tell you, it's difficult pulling teeth out of hens, okay? In fact, it's impossible. But the figures that we got indicate that since Friday, about 4,000 new infections have been reported here in Ottawa. But what has that done to the hospitals? Well, let's have a look at it, okay? I'm not making these figures up. These are figures that come from the hospitals themselves, from Health Ottawa, okay? On Friday, there were 7 people with COVID in our hospitals. 7. Today, after more than 4,000 new reported infections, there are 11. That's four more. We've reported infections, 4,000, but only four more people in hospital. That's one a day. I mean, that's that, folks. This is not something we should be panicking over. Now, let's take a look at Ontario. The number of people in hospital today in all of Ontario is 726. I'm not sure how many in ICU. By the way, here in Ottawa, while we have only 11 people in hospital and a population of 1 million, don't forget, okay? I mean, have a look at the percentage. What that's about, 0.00002% or something like that. Now, the population of Ontario is now in excess of about 14 million people, right? Well, 726 people are now in Ontario hospitals, from one side of the province to the other. 726 in hospital. I'm not sure how many in ICU. Can't seem to get that figure. John, you may have it. I don't know. But folks, that is such a small percentage that you can hardly factor it in. It's 726 out of 14 million is about 0.00000000001%. Do the mathematics. Yeah, yes, of course we should continue to be careful. Wear your masks, etc., etc. And there is no question that some people who do come down with this infection have symptoms a little bit worse than a mild cold. I've heard from 2 or 3 of those. But with rare exception, they don't become ill enough to go to hospital. I've gone through the situation. The Ottawa Senators, 13 people now, about 15 senators, including coaches, have come down, and only one coach was sick, and I don't even think he required hospitalization, but he was kind of miserable for 2 or 3 days. But I mean, most of these many of the players, in fact, many people who come down with the infection, folk, have no symptoms whatsoever. They're asymptomatic. So the United States, it seems to me, is beginning to recognize the fact that this is not very serious, and they have said, listen, instead of the 10-day quarantine, we'll reduce that. If you don't have any symptoms, we will reduce it to 5 days. Here in Ontario, just to show you if you got someone in your family who comes down with an infection, tested positive, even though after about 2 days they have no more symptoms, they're just fine, the entire family has got to stay restricted in quarantine for 10 days. Now, in many cases, some members of those families are hospital workers themselves. They're needed desperately at work. But they're not, they have no symptoms themselves whatsoever. They could be and should be at work, but because of restrictions, 10 days, you've got to be at home. Doesn't matter whether you're sick, doesn't matter whether the person in your family was sick or not. Folks, it's time we had another look at this. We keep hearing the figures where they keep panicking us. Sorry, I'm a little upset over the technical problems here, and it always affects me, and I shouldn't. But anyway, but we keep hearing about all the infection rates. But that's not what matters. I suspect that sooner or later, almost all of us are going to come down with one of these infections. Just as sooner or later, almost all of us will come down with some version of a cold, and probably a good percentage of it, if we haven't had a flu vaccine, will come down with the flu. But we don't shut down entire provinces or entire countries because of the common cold. We don't shut it down because of the flu. Now, yes, we did the right. I'm not denying that with Delta and previous waves, we did what we had to do. Some of you may disagree that we went overboard, but whatever it was, we at least fought the good fight, and for the most part won. Although I point out that there were over 10,000 deaths from COVID in Ontario alone, over 30,000 in Canada. So, but this, folks, this Omicron is totally different. It does not, and the evidence is there, does not pose nearly the threat that Delta did. Nowhere near. The great overwhelming majority of people who come down with this infection have nothing more than a few sniffles, maybe for 2 or 3 days, and a sore throat. And that's about it. In fact, I suggest to you that the figures indicate that well over half the people who test positive have no symptoms whatsoever. So, my question to you, do you agree with me that there is no justification for many of the lockdowns that we see now, and in particular, there is no justification whatsoever for not allowing our children back into the classroom next week. John, do we have any? Can you hear me there?
I can hear you fine. I apologize for the technical glitches. I've got my cell phone going. I've got me here, so we're not going to lose you. You're always on, by the way. So
Okay,
it's
good.
you connect to at one point. I connected at a different point, but
All
here
right.
we are. I think, and our apologies to listeners. Arlene says, I totally agree. This is not needed. Glenn says, 1,000% agree with you. Glenn adds, have to agree with you, Lowell. This morning on your old talk station, they were interviewing a doctor from McGill, and all comments were worrisome and harbinger of bad news. But they were talking specifically about Quebec, but never once mentioned at all the comments made were regarding the Quebec situation. This is the big problem about running a cross-Canada radio show, but not qualifying what you are talking about. Kim says, we may have to redefine this disease and call it for the frail disease, because as long as we protect the ones who can die from it. Kathy says, time for us to get back to living life, not in fear. Dean says, so sick of them reporting the total cases. They've been doing this from day one, and I'm getting sick of it. Tell us the percentage hospitalizations and the percentage of ICU beds being filled.
Well, excuse me. Let's deal with the percentage. Mm-hmm. I'm not a mathematician. In fact, strong men shudder when I begin to try to add and subtract. But I do know that the city of Ottawa has a population of slightly over 1 million people. Am I right there, John?
You are correct.
And in this city of over 1 million people, and by the way, this is our hospitals bring in people from, and including from the far north, by the way. So they're out, but in a population of 1 million people, actually, we serve Western Quebec to a large degree as well. So I suspect that the real population that our hospitals serve is probably close to 1.5 million. Because I know, for example, that there are patients in the hospital, because I was there not that long ago, from the far north. Inuit were there. In fact, a number of people in the Dome we're from Tuktoyaktuk. Okay, so let's just say it's 1 million. So of a population of 1 million, with infections, they say that more than 10,000 people have now been infected with this in Ottawa. But there's only 11 in hospital. I mean, think of that, please. Does this justify closing things down, keeping our children home from school? 11 people in hospital, only one sick enough to be in ICU. And we're considering keeping our children home who've already suffered enough from this, okay? I mean, this, folks, this is beginning to be ridiculous. And I know we keep being pounded with the figure, the infection rate. Okay, the infection rate. But you know what? I'm going to tell you, if we ever had a figure as to the infection rate of the common cold during the average winter, you might be surprised. And you know what? You might be surprised to find out that, in fact, a number of people sometimes have to be hospitalized because they get the cold very seriously. I'm not suggesting that this is no worse than the cold, but what I'm saying to you is the facts indicate out of a population of 1 million, probably serving close to 1.5 million, we have in Ottawa 11 people in hospital, 1 in ICU, and they're talking about closing our schools. That's freaking nuts. It's freaking nuts to even consider it. And by the way, I'm on the phone this afternoon. I don't know, Doug Ford will hear about this, and he probably won't want to talk to me, but I'm going to leave the message in his office. I'm going to say, Doug, if you listen to these health experts, these panic mongers, this is what they become, some of them very expert at, is panic mongering, okay? If you listen to them and close down the schools after all of our kids been through so far, I'm going to tell you right now, man, you know what? I'm not going to say you're nuts, but I'm going to say doing what you're contemplating is nuts. I don't think he's going to close them down, but I'm going to tell you, I know the pressure is on him. Some of these health experts say, oh, we can't have it. And some parents too. But I mean, the parents, because the parents have been panicked, right, John? I mean, all the parents are hearing, oh, the infection rate. Folks, I have to go through this again. 1.5 million people. We've got 11 people in a hospital, and they're talking about closing our schools. That doesn't make any sense whatsoever. John, we've lost you again, eh? Oh my God, what the hell's the matter? I mean, this is the year of our Lord 2021, and we can't keep a show on the air. Oh my God. Uh, I got a word in here from our good friends. I hope that you can hear me here at Shields. Uh, a lot of stores have big Boxing Week sales, okay? And the usual strategy is, oh, they extend the sale, extend the sale. Well, I'm going to tell you right now that you can check the prices, and I've told you this before, at the big box stores and elsewhere, all the specials. Check out Shields. You'll be very surprised. Hey, they're very good. They're very good. They've been in business a long time at Shields. They check the other prices. They check to see, can we match that price? Can we beat that price? They do this constantly. They're very good business people. And as a consequence, if you check the prices at Shields, check the prices elsewhere, you'll be very surprised. Not only that, but Shields has got, in all probability, got the exact appliance that you want and need in stock. No big long wait. Shields.ca. John, if you're not there, I'm going to have to sign the show off. We don't have any. Are you there?
I am here.
Okay. Do we have any? What is the problem, John?
My internet is on and off and on and off. I can't explain it. It's just the nature of the internet sometimes.
All right. Do we have any more texts coming in here?
We do. Lisa says, Ford is a puppet for the health authorities. Let's face it, they are running the country. Doug Ford, you've turned into an Edsel, says Terry.
Oh, wait a minute. Hold it. Let's not jump on the guy. You know, and he has stood up to the health authorities in the past. He stood up to the federal government. I'm going to tell you right now, I know for a fact that Trudeau and the federal authorities wanted to close our borders down entirely and not allow any international travel. It was Doug Ford primarily and Jason Kenney who fought this tooth and nail. So don't nail Doug Ford. You can nail him if he closes the schools down. I'll give you the nails, okay? You can provide the hammer. I'll give you the nails. But let's not criticize the guy or condemn the guy before he's had a chance to respond. And by the way, as I say, as soon as this program is over, I'm going to get on the phone down to his office and I'm going to let him know what you people think. But don't criticize him before he's got a chance to act. More comments here, John?
Yes, sir. Oz says many Elgin Street restaurants are shut down due to staff testing positive. Should they reopen despite the risk? A question for Lowell.
I believe, hey, listen, Quebec says, you know what, we need healthcare workers, even though you've tested positive, but you have no symptoms. You can come in and treat sick people. I would say, hey, if you've tested positive and you have no symptoms, yeah, come on in. Of course, why not? Because I believe that in the end, we're all going to get this anyway. It's, you know what, folks? It is a very mild, with very rare exception, it is very mild, very mild. More comments. Go ahead, John.
Yep. A few folks calling this, as we would expect, the plandemic. Here's an email from Rob in Carlton Place, Lowell at blasttheradio.com. I just looked it up, he says, and on December 2nd, Ottawa has 11 cases of COVID in the hospital and 2 in the ICU. Yesterday, there were 8 people in the hospital and 1 in ICU and 0 new admissions. I have a trip planned for the end of January. I am not about to cancel it right now, he says. Let me see. Mike says, isn't it the experts that tell the government what they think they should do, but the final decision is the government's?
Yes, it is. Yes, and as I say, in the past, Doug Ford has stood up to the health authorities. I'm going to tell you, we would have had he listened to the health authorities, we would have had another total lockdown in this province. So he has stood up to them. He's taking everything into consideration. But I'm going to tell you this time, it's not, and let's be very honest, okay? It's not just the health authorities that are recommending that we shut the schools down. There are a lot of parents. And if you read the Citizen today or read the Sun, you will see quotes from some of them who don't think that their kids should be going back to school. So the pressure is coming not just from health authorities. Let's be fair here. Easy to jump all over politicians. God knows some of them need it. But in this case, at least, a good many parents don't want their kids back into the classroom. So let's just, call a spade a spade. John, go ahead.
But is that reaction from those parents due to the fact that they're reacting to all this hype?
Of course. Of course. Whether they've, I mean, you and I have had to dig out. Now, it is the number in hospital is published, but I think this is the first time we've seen the number in hospital published for the past 2 or 3 days. And when
but Lowell, and I told you, I have to dig so hard to find that very basic information.
Yeah.
It's an inventory situation. If this was a retail store, it would be how many do we have in stock and how many do we need?
Not only that, but I mean, if you listen
Supply
to
and
news,
demand.
if you listen to newscasts, watch television, they all are jumping all over the infection rate. But when was the last time you heard anybody in a newscast give you the hospitalization rate? When was the last time you saw a television newscast say, you know what? Things are looking really hopeful here, folks. The infection rate is way up, but this is not being reflected in our hospitals. You know, you're not hearing that.
Because all the news people are doing today is ripping and reading. They're not digging for facts. They're not trying to put, the numbers, speak a language you and I understand. Rip, read, here's what the government says. Moving on to our next story. Hey, look at all the fun little things going on in the world today.
Yeah, but don't forget, I mean, somebody wrote the stuff that they ripped. So, I mean, it's you can blame it somewhere. The fact of the matter is, but you know what gets me?
But was it written in the newsroom, though, or are they literally ripping and reading the press release from the government?
I'm not sure. I'm not sure.
I'll tell you which way I'm leaning.
Yeah, but it would seem to me that by now there would be some newscasters. I mean, there are some responsible newscasters. You would think by now some of these newscasters would start their newscast and saying infection rates are way up, folks, but so far hospitalizations don't seem to be matching this. In fact, hospitalization rates are way down. Let me I went through this yesterday or the day before, but let me do this again. If you check the figures, you will see that back in March and April of this year, when the Delta was really striking hard, we had was about somewhere close to 140 people in Ottawa hospitals with COVID. They were rushing patients from the Toronto hospitals, which were absolutely jammed. They were rushing them here to Ottawa hospitals. In March and April, we had on average very close to 40 people in ICU. And that was with only about 150 new infections per day. Today, we're getting about 600 and 700 new infections reported every day, and one or two new admissions with COVID per day. That's the difference, okay? That's the difference between Delta and Omicron. Big difference. With Delta, 150 new infections, 135, 140 people in hospital, about 40 in ICU. With Omicron, 600 to 700 new infections, one or two people admitted newly every day. John, any more comments here coming?
Absolutely.
But the real question here, what I'd like, is there any justification, in your opinion, out there in closing our schools next Monday? Doug Ford is making the decision the next couple of days whether to allow children back into the classrooms. I know that there are many parents who are listening, watching. Do you want your kids back in school next Monday? Go ahead, John.
Here's a text, 613-413-2217. Newscasts add confusion because of the inconsistent way they report numbers. And this is exactly what I'm saying. An investigative journalist would break down those facts for you. A rip and read situation. I mean, Lowell, could you tell me how many ICU units are available in Ottawa? I couldn't tell you. But when they sit there and they say, oh, our ICUs are filling up, we go, oh no. Well, okay, but give me the numbers. How many are still available? I don't need to freak out until I know that there are. Anyway, no, there isn't any justification to close the schools, says Craig. I still think I'm going to get my booster, whether this variant is severe or not, says Mike. Let the kids go to school, says Carrie. Hospitalization rates are down due to vaccination. Do you agree, asks Oz.
Well, let me just respond to that. Once again, it's really hard to find because it's hard to find the figures on this. There's no question that if we've only had the 2 vaccine shots, that their efficiency is really declined. In fact, they're now saying that if it's been several months since your last shot, they're probably only about 15% effective. I don't know if that's true or not. One thing that is encouraging in this is that from all reports, the booster shot really gives you a lot of immunity. Certainly, it may not prevent you from getting it, but it's certainly preventing you from getting into the hospital. So
it's like a bulletproof vest, right?
Yeah,
I mean, it doesn't prevent you from getting killed, but it certainly betters your chances of surviving the battle.
Yeah, and keep on getting those boosters. But this, once again though, we have to look at the health authorities. Why did it take them so long to get these boosters out there? It seems to me that the evidence was there maybe a month ago, maybe a month and a half ago, that in all probability we better get another shot here. I mean, Israel was doing it. I mean, Israel now is giving the fourth shot. Why are we letting countries like that go so far ahead of it? We knew, as I say, at least a month ago, maybe a month and a half, that we better get a booster shot. But it's really on the last, 2 weeks that we've really been pushing this.
Yep.
So once again, we've lagged on this. When this is all over, I think there's going to be a lot of questions out there about some of the advice that we've got from these highly paid health experts. Some of them, no question that in most cases they're doing their best. But I tell you, there's a lot of questionable decisions being made. Go ahead, John.
All right, Glenn says, have faith. The numbers will not lie if you don't let them. Craig says, positivity is at 26.9%, yet very few are sick. Lisa says, I don't think it matters. The kids should go back to school as this Omicron will likely last all winter, but I think the schools should be making I think there's more to come from Lisa there. I apologize. We didn't have a full comment. But by and large, I think people are saying, yep, get the kids back in school here, Lowell.
I hope so, and that's the message. That's the message that I'm giving to Doug Ford, as I say. And you know what? If you think that the kids should go back to school, particularly if you have kids, could I suggest that you get in touch with your MPP as quickly as possible, whether they're a Liberal, NDP, or whatever they are. Let them know, because I'm going to tell you, both the Liberals and the NDP are lobbying very hard. Close the schools, they say. Well, where's the data to back that up? Now, we're almost out of time here. Let me just go through this one more time. I know that somebody say, oh, God. But, folks, look, the facts are there. Draw your own conclusions. 1 million people in this city, hospitals serving probably close to 1.5 million, infection rates skyrocketing, and we have 11 people in all of our hospitals. There's 3 major hospitals. So there's about 2.5 or 3 people per hospital with Omicron. We're not even sure if it is Omicron. In some cases, I mean, some of these people have been in the hospital for a while. There's a very good chance that some of the cases are from Delta. So once again, we don't know. How many of the 11 are even Omicron? Maybe none of them. I don't know. But very clearly, I mean, the anecdotal is also there, folks. We know people all over the place, in my own family. Come down, test positive, 2 days, boom, over and done with. I mean, with a cold, generally, even a mild cold, it lingers on for about a week. Well, in many cases, even if you have the sniffles and a sore throat, it's over in 2 or 3 days. You may recall a couple of days ago, a woman called, said she'd been tested positive, said she had bronchitis, and I asked her how long. She had about 3 days. Well, you're going to last, probably a cold lasts longer than 3 days. John, sorry for the technical problems.
I'm sorry too. I'm always working on trying to find solutions we can work around. I'm happy to say we appear to have about a 56% connectivity rate today on the show. So there's that. Just to finish off Lisa's thought, if we could, because we started reading hers and then we didn't get part 2. She says, I don't think it matters. The kids should go back to school as this Omicron will likely last all winter, but I think the school should be making all the students and staff wear N95 masks to reduce the risk of infection. Yeah. I mean, 11 people in hospital, Lowell, there's probably more people in the hospital than that who have broken hips or broken bones. I mean, it's getting to be a little, I'm buying into the whole scare tactic thing. I don't deny that COVID's a thing, but.
No, it may change.
Sure.
But so far, even as I say, with infections rates in Ottawa close to 700 a day, we're still like only one new patient goes into a hospital on a day. And we're not even sure if that's Omicron. Delta is still out there. And yes, continue to wear your mask. Take every safety precaution that you can. Keep your distance. And for God's sake, follow the arrows in the supermarket, because it's driving my wife crazy. She's out there right now, and I know she's going to come back in with her bags of groceries, going to slam them down. She says, I don't understand why people can't follow the arrows.
There's so many questions. Hey, Lowell, speaking of feeding, I'm going to feed the hamster, and hopefully we have a much better success keeping my internet connection
I think
going.
you should take that whole unit of yours and drop kick it through the goalposts of life. Thank you all. We'll be back.
We hope.
The Lowell Green Show is seen and heard live around the world at 2 p.m. Eastern. Connect with us online at blasttheradio.com/Lowell Green. Can't join us live? Download the Lowell Green podcast. Available on Apple, Spotify, Google, and more. Ask your smart speaker to play the Lowell Green podcast. This is a production of blasttheradio.com.